The city burned around them, and the smoke rose into the purple sky like dark fingers reaching for salvation that would never come. Lieutenant Commander Kate Morrison stepped through the rubble with her rifle ready and her heart heavy, because this was the third dead world she had seen this month, and the Krell Empire left nothing but ash in their wake. Crystalline structures that once stood proud and beautiful lay shattered across the ground like broken dreams and among the ruins. She saw bodies of the Silvari people with their elegant features frozen in their final moments of terror. Kate had orders to survey the damage and report back to the Aurora, but nothing could have prepared her for what she found in the center of what used to be a Grand Place. A young woman knelt there holding another woman in her arms, and both had the distinctive pointed ears and silver hair of the Silvari race. But what made Kate freeze in her tracks was the massive creature coiled around them both. The dragon was enormous, with scales that gleamed like molten gold, even through the dust and ash. And its eyes burned with an intelligence that was almost human, and when it looked at Kate, she felt her soul being weighed and measured. The kneeling woman looked up, and her violet eyes met Kate's brown ones, and in that moment, something passed between them that transcended language and species. Kate slowly lowered her rifle and approached with her hands visible and non-threatening. Woman spoke in broken human standard language, and her voice cracked with desperation and grief. "I beg you, human, please take me as yours, and I will serve you forever. Just save my sister, please. She is dying, and I have nothing left to offer but myself." Kate felt her stomach turn at the words, because slavery was something humanity had abolished centuries ago, and the very idea of buying another sentient being made her sick. The dragon rumbled deep in its chest, and the sound vibrated through the ground beneath Kate's boots, and she could see the creature's muscles tensing as if preparing to attack or defend. She could not tell which. Kate knelt down, slowly keeping her movements careful and deliberate, and she looked at the injured woman in the other's arms. The younger sister was pale even for a Silvari, and blood seeped from a wound in her side that looked like it came from shrapnel, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. "I do not buy people," Kate said firmly, "but I will help you anyway, because that is what humans do." The kneeling woman, whose name Kate would soon learn was Lyra, looked at her with confusion and disbelief, as if the concept of help without payment was foreign to her. "But why would you help us when we have nothing, and we are not even your kind?" "Because it is right," Kate replied simply, and she tapped her communicator and called for an emergency medical transport. The dragon watched this exchange with its massive head tilted, and Kate could swear she saw something like approval in those ancient eyes. Lyra clutched her sister Mira closer, and tears streamed down her face, leaving clean tracks through the dust and grime. "The Krell took everything from us, and they destroyed our cities and killed our people, and we ran, but Mira was hurt, and I could not save her alone." Kate pulled out her field medical kit and began working on Mira's wound, applying pressure and injecting
Ow!
her with a stabilizing compound that would buy them time until proper medical care arrived. The dragon shifted closer, and its warm breath washed over them, smelling of smoke and something ancient and wild. "This is Ember," Lyra said, gesturing to the creature, "and he has been with me since I was a child, and he is bonded to me and will not leave my side." Kate nodded and tried not to show how nervous the massive predator made her. "Can he fit in our transport ship?" Lyra actually smiled a little at that. "Timber can make himself smaller when needed, and he is very intelligent and understands more than most people." Realized the medical transport arrived minutes later, and the pilot's eyes went wide when he saw the dragon, but Kate's authority got them all aboard without too much argument. As they lifted off from the ruined planet, Kate watched Lyra hold her sister and whisper to her in their musical language, and Ember curled his body around them both in a protective embrace. Captain Nicole Grant was going to have Kate's head for this unauthorized rescue, but looking at the grateful tears on Lyra's face, Kate decided it was worth whatever punishment came. The Aurora loomed ahead in orbit, and Kate wondered what she had just started, because bringing refugees aboard was one thing, but bringing a dragon and two aliens who possessed unknown knowledge was something else entirely. Lyra looked out the viewport at the human ship, and her eyes widened. Her vessels are so different from ours, and they are built for war and strength rather than beauty. Kate followed her gaze. "We learned the hard way that beauty does not stop bullets, and sometimes you need strength to protect what you love." Lyra nodded slowly and her hand absently stroked. Ember's scaled snout. I understand that better than you know. And I was a scholar before the war, and I studied ancient texts and history, and now I know nothing but running and hiding and watching my people die. You are safe now, Kate assured her, though she was not entirely sure she could keep that promise. Lyra looked at her with those haunting violet eyes. I offered myself as property because that is what the Krell do to us, and they take our people and enslave them, and I thought all powerful species did the same. Kate felt anger rise in her chest, not at Lyra, but at the galaxy that had taught her such a horrible lesson. Humans are not like the Krell, and we believe every sentient being has worth and dignity. Then your people are rare and precious, Lyra whispered. The transport docked with the Aurora, and medical teams rushed aboard to take Myra to the medical bay, and Lyra refused to leave her sister's side, and Ember had to be coaxed into the cargo bay, where he barely fit even when he made himself as compact as possible. Kate watched it all unfold and knew that her simple act of kindness had just changed the course of the war in ways she could not yet imagine. Captain Grant summoned her to the bridge, and Kate went expecting a reprimand, but ready to defend her choices. She walked through the corridors. She passed crew members whispering about the dragon and the alien refugees, and she could feel the ship's atmosphere changing with uncertainty and curiosity and fear, all mixed together. But Kate remembered Lyra's desperate plea and her willingness to sacrifice her own freedom for her sister. And she knew she would make the same choice again, because that was what it meant to be human. The Aurora's medical bay hummed with activity as Dr. Amy Chen worked over Myra's unconscious form, and the monitors beeped steadily, showing vital signs that were weak but stable. Lyra stood nearby, refusing to sit despite having been on her feet for over 20 hours, and her violet eyes tracked every movement the doctor made with desperate intensity. Presence could be felt throughout the ship, even though he was 3 decks below in the cargo bay, and crew members reported strange phenomena, like lights flickering and temperature fluctuations that seemed to correspond with Lyra's emotional state. Captain Nicole Grant stood in her ready room with Kate, and her expression was carefully neutral, which Kate knew meant she was actually quite angry. You brought an unknown alien species and a massive sealed predatory creature onto my ship without authorization, and you put every person aboard at risk. Kate stood at attention. Yes, Captain, and I would do it again. Grant's eyebrow rose. Care to explain that insubordination? Commander Kate met her gaze steadily. Because we are supposed to be better than the Krell, and if we turn away people in need just because they are inconvenient, then what are we fighting for? Captain was silent for a long moment, then sighed and rubbed her temples. The dragon is causing problems, and engineering reports power fluctuations, and security is nervous about having an uncontained apex predator on board. In half the crew thinks we should hand them over to command for interrogation, and the other half, Kate asked. Grant almost smiled. The other half wants to adopt them, and Ensign Brady started a collection to get medical supplies for the younger sister. Kate felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. What are your orders? Captain Grant walked to her viewport and looked out at the stars. Keep them contained and earn their trust, and find out what they know and why the Krell are so interested in them. And Caddy-S, Captain, try not to start any more incidents down. In engineering, Chief Engineer Lisa Park was having a very interesting conversation with Lyra, who had wandered down during one of Mira's stable periods, seeking something to do with her hands. The Sylvari woman studied the Aurora's power distribution system with intense curiosity, and her fingers traced the conduit pathways with surprising familiarity. Your energy flow is inefficient, Lisa Park said, watching her. And you can see that. Lyra nodded. My people use crystalline matrices to channel power, and it reduces resistance and increases output by nearly 30%. And I could show you if you have the materials. Lisa considered this. Captain would need to approve any modifications. Lyra's face fell. Of course, and I understand. And I am a prisoner here. Despite the kindness shown, you are not a prisoner, Lisa said firmly. And you are a guest, and there is a difference. The two women worked side by side for the next hour, with Lyra explaining Sylvari technology and Lisa translating it into human engineering terms, and a genuine friendship began to form. Meanwhile, in the cargo bay, Member lay coiled in the corner with his golden eyes half closed but fully aware, and several Crew members had gathered at a safe distance to observe the creature. Dragon's head lifted, and it regarded them with what might have been amusement, and when a brave ensign stepped closer. Ember exhaled a small puff of smoke that smelled like cinnamon, and made the human cough. The crew quickly learned that Ember was far more intelligent than any animal they had encountered, and he seemed to understand human speech even if he could not speak it, and his bond with Lyra was something beyond their comprehension. Kate visited Lyra in the medical bay that evening, and found her asleep in a chair beside Mira's bed with exhaustion finally claiming her. Dr. Chen looked up from her work. She has not left her sister's side except for that brief visit to engineering, and I had to threaten to sedate her to get her to eat something. How is the patient? Kate asked. Chen's expression was cautious, stable, but she needs medicine we do not have on board, and the nearest supply depot is 3 days away at maximum speed, and I am not sure she has 3 days. Kate felt her heart sink. What does she need? Day compound that promotes rapid cellular regeneration, and the Solvari apparently have it, but we destroyed most of their infrastructure, and finding any will be difficult. Kate made a decision. Plot a course to the nearest human medical station, and I will clear it with the Captain. Shay left the medical bay and nearly collided with Lyra, who had woken and followed Harry. Heard what the doctor said, and my sister will die without the medicine. Kate turned to face her. We will find it, and I promise you. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Why do you care so much, and we are nothing to you? Kate put a hand on her shoulder. You are not nothing, and you are people, and that is enough. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the ship, and red lights flashed as the crew scrambled to battle stations. Krell ship's incoming. Captain Grant's voice came over the intercom, and all hands prepared for combat. Kate and Lyra ran for the bridge, and behind them they could hear Ember's roar echoing through the ship's corridors. As the Dragon sensed the danger, the bridge was organized chaos as crew members rushed to their stations, and the view screen showed 3 Krell warships closing fast. They must have tracked us, Captain Grant said grimly. And weapons? Ready? Lyra stepped forward. Let me help, and Ember can fight. Grant looked at her skeptically. Your dragon against Krell warships? Lyra's expression was fierce. You do not understand what he is capable of, and please give us a chance to repay your kindness. Kate looked at the captain. We are outnumbered, and we could use any advantage. Grant hesitated, then nodded. Do it, but if that creature damages my ship, I am holding you personally responsible. Commander. Kate rushed to the cargo bay with Lyra, and they found Ember already waiting with his wings partially extended and his scales seeming to glow with inner fire. Lyra spoke to him in their musical language, and the dragon's eyes blazed with understanding. Cargo bay doors opened to space, and Ember launched himself into the void with a power that defied physics. The crew watched in awe as the dragon moved through space like it was his natural element, and his wings somehow propelled him forward despite the vacuum. A Krell fighter squadron came at the Aurora, and Ember met them head-on, and what happened next would be talked about in human military circles for years to come. Dragon tore through the enemy fighters with claws and teeth and bursts of superheated plasma that he somehow generated from within his body, and the Krell pilots had no defense against such a primal force. On the bridge, tactical officer Lieutenant Ryan Brooks stared at his screen in disbelief. Captain, the hostile fighters are retreating, and that dragon just took out an entire squadron in under 2 minutes. Grant watched the display direct our fire to the capital ships and let our new ally handle the fighters. Battle raged for 30 minutes, but with Ember protecting the Aurora from fighter attacks, the human crew could focus their weapons on the larger Krell vessels, and slowly they gained the upper hand. When the last Krell ship jumped away in retreat, the crew erupted in cheers. Ember returned to the cargo bay looking none the worse for wear, and Lyra embraced his massive head while tears of relief streamed down her face. Kate found them there. You saved us all. Lyra looked up. Saved my sister, and this is the least we could do. But the victory was short-lived, because a message came through from Krell High Command, and it was broadcast on all frequencies. We know you have the Solvari females, and return them to us, or face total war. Grant looked at Kate. What have we gotten ourselves into? Kate had no answer, but she knew one thing with certainty, and they would not surrender Lyra and Myra, no matter what came next. The Aurora raced through space toward human territory, But everyone aboard knew the Krell would not give up so easily, and the threat of total war hung over them like a dark cloud. Kate found Lyra on the observation deck at midnight ship time, staring out at the stars with Ember's head resting in her lap, and the dragon had learned to compress himself to fit through the ship's corridors, though it was still an impressive and somewhat terrifying sight. Lyra looked up as Kate approached, and her violet eyes were haunted. "I need to tell you the truth about why the Krell want us so badly." Kate sat down beside Harry. "I'm listening." Lyra took a deep breath. "My people were not just victims of random conquest, and we possess something that Krell desperately want, and it is knowledge of an ancient vault hidden deep within our homeworld." "What kind of vault?" Kate asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer was not going to be simple. Lyra stroked Ember's scales absently. "Thousands of years ago, before my people became what we are now, another civilization existed on our world, and they were incredibly advanced, and they created wonders we still do not fully understand, and then they vanished, leaving only their greatest achievements locked away in a vault beneath the ground." "And Ember?" Kate prompted, looking at the dragon. "Ember is not just my companion, and he is a guardian created by the Ancient Ones through methods we have lost, and he is genetically and magically engineered to protect the vault, and there were once hundreds like him, but now he may be the last." The dragon's eyes opened and regarded Kate with an intelligence that suddenly seemed even more profound. "What is in the vault?" Lyrilla's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Weapons and knowledge and technology that could reshape the galaxy and the Krell. I believe if they control it, they can conquer every civilization, including humanity. And that is why they invaded my world, and that is why they will never stop hunting us." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. "How many people know about this?" Lyra looked at her sadly. "Only the Keepers, and I am one, and my sister Mira is another, and we were chosen from birth to guard this secret, and to ensure the vault never falls into the wrong hands." "Why did you run?" Kate asked. "And why not stay and fight?" "Because the Krell were torturing our people to find the Keepers, and they were killing entire cities to force us to reveal ourselves, and I could not let Myra die for this burden, so we fled." Kate stood and began pacing. "I need to tell the captain, and this changes everything." Lyra grabbed her hand. "Please, and you must understand, and if your leaders decide the vault is worth taking, they could become just like the Krell." Kate looked into her eyes. "We are not like them, and I promise you that." But even as she said it, she wondered if she could truly make that promise for all of humanity. Captain Grant called an emergency meeting of the senior officers, and Kate watched as Lyra told them everything, with Ember coiled in the corner of the briefing room radiating protective energy. "Commander." Olivia Hayes was the first to speak after Lyra finished. "Should turn them over to Fleet Command immediately, and this is beyond our authority." Loot Ryan Brooks shook his head. "If we do that, we lose any tactical advantage, and the Krell will assume we know about the vault, and they will attack regardless." "What do you suggest?" Grant asked. Brooks leaned forward. "We go back to Veridias, and we access the vault before the Krell do, and we deny them these weapons. That is suicide." Hayes protested. "And they have the planet locked down with at least 50 ships, maybe not." Brooks pulled up a star chart, "and the Krell forces are concentrated here and here. But there is a debris field that could hide our approach, and if we can get a small team to the surface." Grant looked at Lyra. "Could you open this vault?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. But it requires both Mira and myself and the Keepers work in pairs, and neither of us can do it alone." "And your sister is still recovering?" Kate said. Dr. Chen spoke up from her sea tie. "Can't have her stable enough for limited activity in 48 hours, but I do not recommend putting her in a combat situation." Grant stood and walked to the viewport. "This is not a decision I can make lightly, and we are talking about starting a war to save 2 aliens, and no offense intended." Lyra stood as well. "I understand, and you have already given us more than we deserve. And if you wish to leave us somewhere safe and continue on, I will not blame." Uthram was silent for a long moment, then Kate spoke. "Captain, with all due respect, and we became explorers to find new life and new civilizations, and to extend the hand of friendship across the stars. And if we abandon Lyra and Mira now because it is difficult, Then we have failed that mission, Grant. Looked around the room at her officers all. In favor of the insane suicide mission, raise your hand. Ren went up, including Hayes, who looked unhappy about it but determined. Grant smiled grimly then. We better start planning, and because if we are going to do this, we are going to do it. Right over the next 2 days, the Aurora rendezvoused with a small human strike force, led by Admiral Helen Torres, who had been monitoring the situation, and brought 3 more ships to support the mission. Torres was a legend in the fleet, known for impossible victories and unshakable courage, and when she met Lyra, she studied the Sylvari woman with intense interests. So, you're the one who started all this trouble? Lyra bowed her head. I'm sorry for the burden I have placed on your people. Torres laughed. Do not apologize, and I have been looking for an excuse to bloody the Krell's nose for months, and you just gave it to me. The plan was risky, and Kate would lead a ground team to the vault, while the fleet kept the Krell occupied in orbit, and Ember would provide air support during the insertion. Mira then was finally well enough to stand, though she was still weak, and when the sisters reunited, they held each other and cried and spoke in their musical language. Kate gave them privacy, but Lisa Park, who had been watching, said later that it was the most beautiful and heartbreaking thing she had ever witnessed. The night before the mission, Kate found Liara in the cargo bay with Ember, and the dragon was fully extended for the first time in days. Stretching his wings and checking his scales. Tomorrow, we return to my world, Lyra said, and I never thought I would see it. Ajinkit checked her rifle. We will succeed, and I have faith. Lyra turned to her. Why do humans have such courage, and you barely know us, and yet you risk everything? Kate smiled. Because someone once told me that if you do not stand up for what is right, then you stand for nothing at all. Ember made a sound that was almost like a purr and nudged Kate gently with his massive head. I think he likes you, Lyra said with a small smile. The dragon has good taste, Kate replied. As they prepared for sleep that night, the Aurora and her small fleet jumped toward Veridias and toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of multiple civilizations. Lyra lay in her bunk with Myra beside her and whispered a prayer to the Ancient Ones, asking for strength and courage. Ember stood watch over them, both his golden eyes gleaming in the darkness and ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. Kate sat in her quarters, cleaning her weapons and thinking about the impossible mission ahead, and about the alien woman who had begged to be sold and who instead had found friends willing to die for her freedom. The stars streaked past the viewports, and the Aurora sailed toward destiny. Verdias looked like a corpse from orbit, and the once green forests were ash, and the crystalline cities were rubble, and Krell ships circled the planet like vultures waiting for carrion. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the tactical display with calculating eyes. A debris field will hide us for approximately 17 minutes, and after that all hell breaks loose and make every second count. Kate stood in the drop pod bay with her team of 12 Marines, and Lyra and Mira, who wore borrowed human armor that had been modified for their slighter frames. Ember waited in the launch tube designed for fighters, and his wings were folded tight against his body, and his eyes blazed with anticipation. Mira was pale but determined, and she gripped her sister's hand tightly. I am ready. Lyra looked at Kate once. We are on the ground. I can guide us to the vault entrance, but the path will be dangerous, and the Krell have enslaved our people and forced them to excavate the area. We will free as many as we can, Kate promised. The drop pods launched, and the team plummeted through Veridias's atmosphere with flames licking at the pods' exteriors, and the ride was violent enough to make even experienced Marines grip their restraint. Sember followed in a controlled dive, and his scales glowed red from atmospheric friction, and he looked like a meteor. Streaking across the sky, they landed in what used to be a sacred grove, and now it was a crater filled with Krell machinery and enslaved Sylvari workers who looked up in shock as human Marines and a dragon appeared among them. The Krell guards reacted quickly, but not quickly enough, and Kate's team moved with practiced efficiency, taking down the slavers before they could raise an alarm. Ember landed with an impact that shook the ground, and the freed Sylvari workers stared at him in awe and wonder, and many fell to their knees. Lyra spoke to them in her language, and her words were urgent and commanding, and slowly they began to respond, pointing toward a massive excavation site in the distance. The dragon is real, one old Sylvari man whispered, and the legends were true. Lyra helped him stand. Gather everyone who can fight, and we need your help. The old man's eyes hardened. We will fight, and we have waited for hope to return. Kate's team moved quickly through the ruined landscape, and they could hear the sounds of battle beginning in orbit. As Admiral Torres engaged the Krell fleet, more freed Sylvari joined them as they advanced, and soon they had a small army of ragged but determined fighters armed with scavenged Krell weapons. The vault entrance loomed ahead, and it was partially uncovered by the Krell excavation, revealing architecture that was neither nor anything Kate had ever seen. The walls were smooth and almost organic looking, and they seemed to pulse with a faint inner light that hurt to look at. Suddenly, the ground shook, and a massive Krell walker emerged from behind a pile of rubble, and its weapons charging Ember roared a challenge and launched himself at the war machine, and the resulting clash of ancient magic and modern technology was spectacular. The dragon's claws tore through armor plating, and his plasma breath melted weapon systems, and within minutes the walker was a smoking ruin. But the noise had attracted attention, and more Krell forces began converging on their position. Kate's Marines formed a defensive perimeter. Lyra, get to that entrance and we will hold them off. Lyra and Mira ran toward the vault with Kate close behind, and as they approached, the entrance began to glow in response to their presence. Sisters placed their hands on the smooth surface and spoke words in a language so old made Kate's ears ache, and the entrance dilated open like a living thing inside. The air was cool and smelled of ozone and ancient stone, and the walls glowed with soft bioluminescent light that cast strange shadows. They had only gone a few steps when a voice boomed from behind them. Stop! Kate turned to see a massive Krell warlord standing in the entrance, and he was easily 8 feet tall, with bio-enhanced muscles and armor covered in kill markings. His name was Thraxus, and Kate knew his reputation as one of the Krell's most brutal commanders. You will open the vault for me, or I will execute every Sylvari. We have captured one by one, starting with these. Thraxus gestured, and his soldiers dragged forward several Sylvari elders with marks of torture on their bodies. Lyra stepped forward. No, please, and I will do whatever you want. Kate grabbed her arm. Do not, and he will kill them anyway. Thraxus laughed. The human understands, and Krell do not make bargains with lesser species than I challenge you, Kate said, and her voice carrying across the chamber. Krell warlord tilted his head. You challenge me, and a small human female against a Krell warrior. Kate raised her rifle. By your own traditions, you cannot refuse a formal challenge without losing honor before your soldiers. Thraxus considered this, and around him his warriors shifted uneasily because Kate was right, and Krell culture demanded he accept. Very well, and when I kill you, I will take the Sylvari females anyway. Kate handed her rifle to Lyra. Then you better make it quick, and I have a tight schedule, though. Fight was brutal from the first moment, and Thraxus moved with speed that should have been impossible for something his size, and his first blow sent Kate flying across the chamber to crash into the wall. She rolled to her feet, tasting blood, and barely dodged his second attack, and his claws gouged deep furrows in the stone where she had been standing. Kate used every trick she knew, and she was fast and trained and determined. But Thraxus was engineered for war and had centuries of combat experience. Caught her with a backhand that cracked ribs and sent her sprawling, and as he moved in for the kill, Kate knew she had failed. Then the roof exploded inward, and Ember crashed through in a cascade of stone and fury. The dragon had heard Kate's distress through his bond with Lyra, and he had abandoned the external battle to come to her. Thraxus turned to face this new threat, and for the first time Kate saw uncertainty in his eyes, and Kate fought as one, and the dragon's massive strength combined with Kate's tactical thinking, and together they were more than the sum of their parts. The battle raged through the vault entrance, and Thraxus fought with desperate ferocity, but he was alone while his opponents moved with perfect coordination. Finally, Ember's jaws closed around the warlord's throat, and it was over. The
house.
Remaining Krell soldiers fled, and the Sylvari elders were freed, and the path to the vault lay open. But alarms began sounding throughout the ancient structure, and Lyra looked panicked. We triggered the defenses, and the vault will not open easily, and it was designed to test those who seek its knowledge. the walls began to shift and reconfigure. And from hidden alcoves emerged guardians that looked like they were made of living crystal and pure energy. The team pressed deeper with Lyra and Mira, working together to solve puzzles that combined mathematics and music and quantum physics in ways that hurt Kate's brain to contemplate. Finally, they reached the heart of the vault, and what they found was not what anyone expected. Instead of weapons, there were seeds and medical databases and terraforming equipment and archives of knowledge spanning millions of years. "This is not a weapon," Kate said. In wonder, Lyra shook her head. "No. And it is a legacy, and the Ancient Ones knew. They were dying, and they left this for whoever came after, and to help them survive and rebuild and create." Mira touched one of the crystalline data cores. They were not conquerors, and they were gardeners. Suddenly, the chamber shook, and debris fell from the ceiling. Admiral Torres's voice came through, Kate's communicator full of static. "Kate and the Krell fleet is preparing to glass your location, and they have given up on capturing the vault, and they would rather destroy it than let us have it." Kate looked at Lyricon. "You activate the vault systems." Lyra moved to a central console. "Yes, but I do not know what will happen." "Do it," Kate ordered. Lyra and Myra placed their hands on the console and spoke in unison, and the vault came alive. Signal burst forth from deep underground, and it raced out into space, carrying a message that had been waiting 10,000 years to be sent across the galaxy. Ancient things began to wake. The signal spread across space faster than light itself, and it carried a message in a language older than any living civilization. Admiral Torres watched her tactical display in shock as new contacts began appearing throughout the system. "Captain, what am I looking at?" Her tactical officer asked. Torres leaned forward, studying the reading's eye. "I think we are about to find out why. Dragons are not just myths. The first to arrive was another dragon larger than ember with scales like polished silver, and it emerged from a nearby moon where it had apparently been sleeping for thousands of years. Then came more in from asteroid fields and dead moons and the ruins of ancient space stations. They came in dragons of every color and size, answering a call they had been waiting eternally to hear. Ember stood on the surface of Viridia's and raised his head to the sky, and his roar was answered by dozens of voices. Echoing across the planet, the Krell fleet found itself suddenly surrounded, and not just by dragons, but by automated defense platforms that had lain dormant for millennia, and they powered up with weapons technology that made modern arms look like toys. The vault Kate watched as holographic displays showed what was happening. Across the system, ancient Silvari colony ships thought lost for generations were changing course toward Verdia's and their AI systems responding to the beacon of an stranger were the massive orbital structures that began to materialize, and they had been cloaked for so long that space itself had forgotten they were there. Lyra stood beside Kate with tears streaming down her face. "The ancient ones prepared for this, and they knew someone would need help rebuilding, and they left us everything. We would need." Myra touched one of the displays. "Not just us, and they left it for everyone, and for any civilization that proved worthy by choosing cooperation over conquest." Admiral Torres opened a communication channel that broadcast to every ship in the system, both human and Krell. "This is Admiral Helen Torres of the human fleet, and what you are seeing is not a weapon, but a gift. And the ancient civilization that built this vault left knowledge and technology for rebuilding, not destroying. And we are offering to share it with anyone who wants peace." For a long moment there was silence, then one Krell captain responded, and his voice was wary. "This war has cost us everything, and our homeworlds are dying, and our people are starving, and we fight because we have no choice." Stories replied immediately. "Then choose differently, and the vault contains terraforming technology and agricultural advances and medical knowledge and enough to help everyone if we stop fighting over it more." Krell captains began to respond, and not all agreed, but enough did that the tide began to turn. Those most loyal ships continued to fight, and they would rather die than accept peace, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the combined forces of humans and Krell, who wanted to survive the dragons, made short work of the holdouts, and their ancient fury was terrible to behold, but tempered by the knowledge that they fought to protect, not to destroy on the surface. Lyra and Mira worked with human engineers and freed Silvari to begin accessing the vault's knowledge, the medical databases. alone contained cures for diseases that plagued every known species, and the agricultural information could turn desert worlds into gardens. Kate stood with Ember watching. The sun set over the ruined city, and already work crews were beginning to clear debris and plant the first new trees. "You know this changes everything," she said to thee. Dragon Ember rumbled in response, and somehow Kate understood that he was content. Lyra joined them, and she looked exhausted, but happy. "The Council of Freed Sylvari has asked me to serve as liaison to humanity, and they want me to join your crew, officially." Kate smiled. "Captain Grant will be pleased, and we could use someone who understands both cultures." And Mira Lyra continued, "And she wants to work with Dr. Chen, and to combine Sylvari medical knowledge with human techniques. That sounds perfect." Kate said over the next weeks the transformation was remarkable. Human and Sylvari engineers worked side by side using vault technology to begin rebuilding Viridias, and even some Krell who had defected joined the effort, bringing their own expertise. The dragons spread across the system, taking up their ancient roles as guardians, and they bonded with volunteers from all three species, creating partnerships that would help maintain the peace. Ember remained with Lyra, and his bond with her had deepened to include a strange protective feeling toward the entire Aurora Krukatom. Grant officially promoted Kate to first officer in recognition of her moral courage and her willingness to see worth in others. When it would have been easier to look away, the ceremony was attended by representatives from all three species, and it marked the first official alliance between humans and Sylvari, and even included some Krell who had sworn to uphold the new peace admiral. Torres gave a speech that was broadcast across multiple systems. "We stand at a crossroads, and we can continue down the path of war and destruction, or we can choose to build something better, and today we choose hope." Lyra stood on the Aurora's bridge wearing a new uniform that marked her as an official crew member, and beside her Mira wore medical scrubs with Dr. Chen's name patch sewn onto them. Kate approached them. "Are you ready for your first official mission?" As liaison officer, Lyra smiled, and it was the first time Kate had seen her truly happy. "I am. And where are we going?" "Torres wants us to make contact with other species and to offer them the same choice we gave the Krell, and to share the vault's knowledge freely with anyone who will use it." Wisely, Mira looked concerned. "What if they choose Worthen?" "We will be ready," Kate said, but we will always offer peace first." Ember's presence could be felt throughout the ship, and the dragon had become a symbol of the new alliance and children of all species. All drew pictures of him and told stories about his bravery and verities. The first new gardens were planted in soil that had been ash, and the first buildings rose from ruins that had seemed permanent. The Krell who had chosen peace worked alongside those they had once enslaved, and the healing was slow but real. One evening, Kate found Lyra alone in the observation deck, watching Viridias recede as the Aurora prepared to jump to their next destination. "You never answered my question from when we first met," Kate said. Lyra turned to her. "What question?" Kate smiled. "I asked why you thought all-powerful species enslaved others." Lyra looked back at the planet. "I was taught that strength meant domination, and that the weak existed to serve the strong, and the Krell reinforced that lesson with fire and blood. And now," Kate prompted, "now I know that true strength is choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier, and it is seeing worth in others and protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Kate put a hand on her shoulder. "You would have made that choice too, if you had the power and you offered yourself to save your sister." "Remember?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Perhaps, but I will never know if I would have had your courage." "You have it now," Kate said, "and you are teaching your people and the Krell and everyone else that there is a better way." Aurora jumped to hyperspace, and behind them Viridias continued its slow healing. The war was not completely over, and there were still Krell factions that refused peace, and still battles to fight. But for the first time, there was real hope. Ember curled up in the cargo bay, which had been expanded and modified to be more comfortable for him, and he dreamed dragon dreams of flying free under an open sky. Across the galaxy, other dragons stood watch over rebuilding civilizations, and they were the guardians the Ancient Ones had created, and finally fulfilling their purpose. Kate stood on the bridge and watched the stars and thought about a desperate alien woman who had begged to be sold. Lyra had offered herself as property because she believed that was the only currency that mattered, but humanity had shown her something different, and that people had worth simply because they existed, and that kindness did not require payment, and in doing so, they had gained not a slave but a friend, and not just one friend, but an entire civilization of allies. The voyage ahead would be long and challenging, and there would be setbacks and struggles, but they would face them together, and humans, and Sylvari, and even reformed Krell, and dragons, because that was what it meant to be worthy of the Ancient One's legacy, not to conquer but to cooperate, not to dominate but to share, not to enslave but to set free. And as the Aurora sailed toward new adventures, Lyra stood at her station with pride and purpose. She was no longer a desperate refugee begging for mercy. She was an officer and a liaison and a bridge between civilizations. She knew without doubt that she had found not owners but family embers. Distant roar echoed through the ship like a song of joy, and everyone who heard it smiled. The new dawn had come, and it had wings.